Welcome, everybody, to the Zion Experience. I'm Jim Shaw. I forget Jordan. Jordan Frank, the other co-host, is on.
I'm here.
You know, we really don't prepare for this.
You know, we're better off to come. That's about all you're going to get. Yeah, that's what I got.
I have ham and cheese loaf in the refrigerator for days like today.
With that, let's get back into it.
Let's get in our groove. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Zion Experience, or TZE as we call it. And I'm your host, Jim Shaw. I'm running solo today. My partner in crime, Jordan Frank, is unable to be on this podcast, but that's okay. We've got my good friend and an industry legend, David Quintilo, or Q as I call him, on as our special guest today. And we're continuing or having a continuation of a series that we're doing called the ZSG Thought Leadership Series, specific or focusing in on supply chain leaders. So let me introduce Q a little bit. It's got here that he's a seasoned supply chain leader. He is also the founder of Leverage Supply Chain Group. He brings more than, should I say all the years here, 3+ decades, Q?
No, just say a lot.
Let's just say a lot. He brings a lot of years of shaping logistics for some of the world's largest brands. Spent a long time, a lot of his career at UPS. He held several leadership positions, spanning from supply chain to, this is what I think the team will find interesting, is a diverse mix of leadership positions. But you were in operations, in the supply chain operations. You were in marketing and strategy. You did some commercial sales, finance, and then most recently you were the vice president of healthcare logistics and distribution, which is where we met. And you oversaw about $10 billion of a portfolio in life sciences. Today, you leverage your deep industry insight and hands-on leadership to help companies transform their supply chain into engines of growth and competitive advantage. So that's a big introduction. You didn't write it. I'm sure somebody wrote it for you because you're like me, but we're glad to have you back on the show, Q, and you're coming to us live from the Leverage World Headquarters. So did I miss anything on the introduction?
No, but I really like the legend status. I didn't realize that I had achieved that status. So
there you go.
That. I'm gonna have to put that in my CV and put that on the website.
There you go. The legend, David Quintilo, or Q. So,
no, I appreciate that, Jim. Yeah, it's been definitely a long career and really enjoying what we're doing here at Leverage. So, no, I think you nailed everything.
Well, let's start into that a little bit. I think to set the stage before we go into some of the questions and the back and forth is, you know, you and I met, oh Lord, Q, it's probably been a decade ago. I was in an engineering role. You were in the operations leadership role. I think we told the story on one of the last podcasts we did together. If you gave me the nickname of Boots because I prefer wearing Red Wing boots. I've worn them for 20+ years. And I think you had some Italian boots on. So we shared the love of boots, but they were different boots. And then, but one of the things is, as you were at UPS was famous for and really solid in moving people around in what we would call rotations, and you just get a good breadth of different business. But you came out of the finance world and came into more of the operations world, and you've since put your career at UPS kind of in the rearview mirror. But then you got out and you started Leverage. So maybe just talk a little bit about how Leverage started. It's crazy. Before we started recording, we talked about, it's been 3 years, and I remember sitting there with you the first time in your all's headquarters, and how far you all have come. I'm super happy for you, and you all are doing great things, big things. Leverage is out there, and Zion's out there. And I remember in January of 2022 when we were talking to each other, and you were recently retired, and I was recently starting new, and so just talk a little bit about the journey and maybe plug a little of what Leverage does, so our listeners know it, and then we'll go into some of the questions.
No, absolutely. I appreciate that, Jimmy. Yeah, the world headquarters was not even an office in my basement, right? And you were kind enough to give me some advice and some coaching. Post a couple jobs that you ended up leaving to start your own business, and congrats to you on Zion. And you guys have been an inspiration to really all of us that have left larger organizations and started our own. So certainly appreciate that coaching and guidance that you were able to give me when I was starting out. And yeah, this has turned into as we talked originally. I think I told you, yeah, just a few people would be great, and helping some clients that I have built a relationship with over the years, and just plug a few gaps for people that between their providers, so 3PL providers, transportation providers, things that they're not able to get with some of the larger organizations as a standard offering. That's where we came in. Is just started out plugging those gaps, and it's grown into 25 people now, and most of those people are dispatched on different projects, helping clients, focusing on. We do a lot of private equity work now, diligence, 3PL work, manufacturers. So anything really in the supply chain that is a gap for those folks, where they need help with, that's where we come in. And we've got a great group of channel partners for things that we don't do, like Zion, and what you guys do. We certainly couldn't replicate, and don't want to, don't plan to. But we've grown to that 25 or so folks, and I've got some great partners working with me as well, Mike Borgerson and Bobby Clements, and then Lee Ganem and Jeff Baumblatt helping us go to market. So it's a good core team that we're able to take to market, and we've been fortunate. We've been successful, and we've got some work in Europe now, and we have over the past couple of years, and that's why we've got a world headquarters now.
That's awesome, man.
Getting some work over there.
Well, congratulations on all the success. And if you're listening to this for the first time, if you need some experts in the supply chain, that's why Q is on here with us and his team of 25 now, and they can solve a variety of problems and be executive advisors. They can just, that's all we try to do, right? At the end of the day, people ask what Zion does, and we try to deliver a memorable experience and guide intelligent change by being a trusted advisor. That's what we seek to do. And I think Leverage is an inspiration in terms of it's the industry's changed to what used to be consultants that were more transactional, and certainly not all of them, but the world's really gone to, there's a lot of subject matter experts that maybe they're done with their first job, their real job, and now they've gone out, they want to work on what they want to work on, and they can really add value to companies, and companies need that. There's a lot of companies that really need that expertise. So that's a gap that Leverage fills. So, well, let's get into some of the questions, Q, and just talk about this. Again, is our thought leadership series. So we're really trying to put into the world, just not that we know everything, but we've been through some battles. We've got the scars to prove it. We've learned probably the harder way instead of maybe the easy way. And so what we're trying to do is just put back out some of that into the world. And maybe there's a young leader on here, or there's a seasoned leader on here that get some value out of this. So in your view, what makes a great supply chain leader different from a good one? So we all know the book Good to Great, and Jim Collins. It's an older book, but what makes somebody great versus just good in the supply chain world?
Yeah, and a lot of this is gonna port over to not just supply chain, but business in general, like you say, with some of the leadership books and leadership series, but it certainly applies in the supply chain world as well. And I resemble those remarks about battle scars. So that's the gray hair and less of it. and other things that proves, there you go. That proves we've gone through the ringer, right?
That's right.
One thing, Jimmy, I think a good leader is one who doesn't just keep score. They actually change the game. And so that's why I try to portray to people, don't sit on the sidelines. Don't be a scorekeeper. Go change the game. You know, get in the game and change the game. So whether there's a couple things. There's vision versus execution. So a good manager or a good leader can execute, right? They execute day in, day out. That's good. But to be great, you really have to create that vision. So there's an execution day to day, but there's also a vision of a goal and what you're working on for the finish line, not just the day to day or week to week or month to month. There's reactive versus proactive. You know, you with all the Grace One type events that we keep seeing, you cannot just be reactive. And so a good leader reacts well, but a great leader will be proactive and be ready for those Grace One events that you don't know what it is going to be, but you have options and you've built relationships in order to sustain that and pivot as needed. And then finally, there's managing people versus inspiring people. You know, a good leader manages people well, right? But you really have to inspire people to be a great leader, and that comes from, you know, creating a vision. And if everybody knows what they're working towards and want to work towards that, obviously that's much better than people just executing and then a leader managing those people. You remember Brad Mitchell, Jimmy?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorites.
Yeah. So
he left us way too early, right?
Yeah. No, great man. So did you ever hear the bricklayer story that he used to tell?
Yes, I did, but tell the audience. I had to recall, but yes, yeah, tell the audience because it's a good one. This is a good one. Yep.
Yeah. So there's three people working on that are laying bricks at a site, and so a man goes up to the first bricklayer and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And they say, I'm laying bricks one by one. I lay them this way, and then I put one here, and so forth, and I repeat. The man says, okay, and goes to the next one. The next one, and he says, well, hey, what you working on? Oh, I'm building a wall. It's going to be 10 feet high. It's going to be 40 feet wide, and it's going to, surround the perimeter. So, okay. Then man goes on to the third person that's laying bricks and says, hey, what are you working on? And they say, oh, it's great. I'm working on what's going to be the most incredible cathedral in the city, in this whole region. So this is just the start of what's going to be a gathering place for everybody in this town. And I'm so happy to be a part of it. That's the difference in inspiring people versus managing people. Just managing the first person and the second person that he talked to versus actually communicating and creating that vision and that inspiration for that person so that they feel a part of it and they know what they're working on. So I always took that story to heart in my leadership style. I tried to, at least.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think you got some good points, and it's hard. One person's definition of good and great, but I think you hit on some really key themes. I think one is there's a lot of good managers, right? There's a lot of good leaders, but the ability to inspire is a theme that you just talked about. It's like when you've really got, you think right now, it's like, hey, think of the people that have inspired you in your leadership journey or in your career. It's like you can immediately pop. Brad Mitchell would come in. He was one, he was one that I thought, again, he left us too early, but at UPS, he would have been probably the top one I'd have put. There's a lot of good people there, but Brad was certainly inspirational. He rallied people. He just, there was an energy with him that you felt that made him a great leader. The ability to see into the future. We've called it, I steal this from our Pinnacle coach of being the ability to see around the corner, to know what's coming before it comes. And sometimes that's doing the basics and the blocking and tackling and preparing for it. We did it with one of the things we do that I think is a differentiator is we have a partner program. You've been part of it. We've got an advisory board. Most integrators our size, and especially when we started 3 years ago, don't do those type of things. But we did them because strategically we knew we were going to grow to a place, and we needed outside advice. We needed somebody to be a good to bounce ideas off, and we wanted to look around the corner, so to say. And I love the story about that. I think about sports a lot of times. You can relate good and great in sports, and you think of the greats and what they did and how much extra they put in, how much work. You think about Michael Jordan and his relentless desire to be great and what it took to be great, and how he brought everybody else up with him. High tides raise all ships, and great leaders do that.
Right.
And then you think about, to your vision as well. I'm gonna probably mess this up, but Wayne Gretzky, he always talked about, one of his famous quotes is, you need to skate to where the puck will be instead of where it's at, and anticipate that. And so he was one of the greatest, but I like that. And then I'm going to add this as well. So your bricklayer is, I think I've shared this with you before. I don't know if we've shared it with the audience, but one of the books that we really built some of the foundational values of Zion on was The Carpenter by John Gordon. It's one of my favorite books. And inside of there, your bricklayer is like when this guy met the carpenter for the first time, he asked him what he was doing, and he was building his masterpiece. So I would say great leaders are building a masterpiece. They're building something beyond. They've got a purpose for what they're doing beyond just, I got the shipments out the door. I hit this month's quotas. I hit this year's plan. They're building a masterpiece, and that masterpiece may look different, but the great leaders or the great athletes or the great fill in the blank, like you said, business people out there, they're building a masterpiece. They have a purpose they wake up for every day. So thanks. That's cool. I like your description of good and great. So if we go out, and you got anything to add on that before I kind of transition?
No, I think one thing that sums it up is, a great leader and an inspiring leader is also a great storyteller. So yes. Sometimes it takes someone that can help people relate to a concept, right? So, whether it's, the bricklayer story, or whether it's a sports analogy of being ahead of the puck, those types of things, that helps people connect. So being a good storyteller certainly helps.
Yeah, there's certainly power in being a storyteller and how you can do it. I've been working for almost 3 decades, and I'm an engineer, and you met me a long time ago, and I think I've evolved as a storyteller. You've always been a good storyteller. You always were a good leader. Even when we met, you had a team that you inspired and you could rally behind, and you had Rich Shaver and Dave McLean and some of the guys, that you all were a dynamic team that did some really foundational legacy stuff of what UPS healthcare logistics has turned into. And you all were there at almost ground zero. But storytelling's an art. And I've learned that in my leadership journey of, you have to be able to cast your vision and share your vision, because as a great leader, you got to get it out, right? A lot of people have it in here, and I've had it in here a long time in my career, but I'm a work in progress of being able to get that out into the world and tell a story about it and share it and inspire others. So I think that's a great point. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. How do you build trust and collaboration across such a wide network of partners, vendors, and internal teams? So you've got a vast network that you deal with. What are some of the things that you do to build trust or to build, to encourage collaboration? Any pieces of advice on that?
Yeah, no, but just to follow up on what you said, I think you've done an outstanding job, Jimmy, and it certainly evolved in the communications of Zion that we all get. LinkedIn and others are inspiring, and certainly your communications have inspired a lot of people. So I appreciate that. As far as the trust and collaboration, it really comes down to three things to me: transparency, reputation, and relationships. So to get that trust and collaboration, transparency is key. So everybody knows what they're working on. They know where their intersections are. So, and where their parallels are. And you provide that transparency, then, when something goes wrong, everybody is there ready to adjust course and to jump in as needed, because they know everybody has been transparent. So there's going to be problems with people. But if you're transparent in the beginning, when those problems come up, you get through them quickly, and you resolve them. Second is reputation. So we all know a lot of people in the supply chain business, and it's a much smaller universe than people would think. You run across people all the time that you've worked with, that have been a former client, that have been a former partner or vendor. I don't like the word vendor, because I don't think you should have vendors. You should only have partners. But you've come into contact with them some way, somehow, and your demonstrated ability to execute with them is your reputation. And it creates that brand credibility that they say, oh, Leverage, yeah, those guys, you can trust what they're doing, and they're great to collaborate with, and they'll certainly steer you in the right direction. And then finally, it's the relationships, right? So supply chain's no different than most business, and that is, it's a people business, right? So if it doesn't, things shouldn't feel forced. So they should feel natural. So if you invested in that relationship and you built a partner relationship, not a vendor relationship, then things go smoothly. And when they don't, you get through them quickly, because you've got that transparency, the reputation or past experience, and you've built that relationship, and you've invested in that. And so when you have a black swan event, let alone a gray swan event, you're not scrambling trying to get vendors to do things for you when they're taking care of their partners. You're going to be left out because you don't have the relationships. So those are the three things that I see that have really impacted trust and collaboration, and create the brand credibility and integrity in the market.
Yeah, I think I mean you nailed it, right? I love your take on this, and I think trust is foundation in any relationship that you've got, in any business, and I don't care if it's your marriage, I don't care if it's your friendships, I don't care if it's with your children, or it's in business. And sometimes we try to separate that too much, but you've got to have that basic layer of trust and being transparent. Authentic is a word that comes to mind with transparency. And I love how you nailed two other points. Is this industry seems huge, but you've heard the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. It's like, I would argue it's 2 or 3 degrees of the supply chain. Is you can't go. I could talk to 2 different people, and there's some way to connect back to you and I, or the people in your network, right? It is a small network, and what you do walks with you, travels with you, your reputation precedes you, and it's a super small world in the supply chain. And that's how I imagine a lot of your business comes in, a lot of your associates. It's like, it's the relationships they've built and that trust they've earned over the years or kept over the years. And I also like
for
what you
sure.
talk.
That's where our growth comes from.
That's all we've got too. It's like we talk with our BD and our marketing and like, where does our business come from? And I've told you this before. It's really 3 places, but first and foremost, it's relationships. Somebody knows us. Somebody went to a new company. Somebody's worked with us previously. Same for you all, right? I trust these people. That's all you want in life. You want somebody that shows up, does what they say they're going to do, is, if something goes wrong, they stand firm, they stand tall, they meet you in the middle on it. And, that's all you can hope for, is that you can rely on the other person and that they do what they say they're going to do and they make your life easier. It's as simple as that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's great. Well, let's keep on moving. We're 26 minutes in already. It doesn't seem like it, huh? Here's a good one that Jordan and I had some fun with when we did this. So we've got kind of the same questions that we're going through. I'm interested to hear your answer to this. So what's your approach to decision making when there's really no clear right answer?
Yeah, I think in supply chain in particular, you're never going to have perfect clarity. And so you're going to need to have a certain percent of the data of of what the question is, and you're going to have to go with it. So you're going to have to take your existing data, get inputs from people you trust, people that are part of your team. It goes back to the question we just talked about, is do you have the relationships and the transparency with partners, with clients, that you can get that kind of input and feedback? And you take all of that and you have to go. You have to make a decision. And hopefully you've built that credibility with your team and the transparency, and your partners and your clients. They understand you're making a decision. And guess what? You're not going to be right every time. So you have to accept that, and you have to not, in this business, you cannot afford to wait till you have 100% clarity or 100% of the data. You're too late. And that's where other organizations end up, especially against larger organizations. They're more nimble. They're more willing to make those decisions quicker, and so they end up being more innovative because of that. So they end up taking market share and becoming a presence in the market because they have made decisions quickly, rather than waiting for layers and layers of approvals and asking too many people to weigh in. You ask enough people, you're going to get a no, right? Or you're going to get a contrary answer, and that just confuses things. So you need to take the inputs and make the decision, and then adjust based on that.
I love it. I think your answer followed similar to what Jordan answered, and we talked about the last time we did. And it's like, you got to make a decision. You'll never have comfort in knowing that there's not a clear answer, yes or no. And I shared, there's a lot of things about Bezos that I don't care for, and Amazon that I don't care for, but you can't deny some of the business leaderships and some of the principles they built the business on and the business that it's turned into. And he talked a lot, Q, about, or one of his concepts is one-way doors and two-way doors. So there's very few decisions in life that are one-way doors, meaning you go in the room and you can't come out of it, right? Most decisions in the supply chain are two-way doors, to where you have to make a decision. If it's the wrong one, you got to be able to, that speed you talked about, you can come right back out and make a decision and change your decision, I should say. But the worst thing I think what you can do as a leader is not make a decision. The worst thing you can do as a company, and you nailed it, why some of these smaller brands and some of these more aggressive brands are eating some of these larger corporations' lunch, is speed to decision. They're not, they don't have this big internal bureaucratic process to make decisions. They can be nimble, they make decisions, and they pivot quickly. One that comes to mind on this is I read something the other day is like AI. I learned a new concept. I posted about it on LinkedIn recently about it's a Latin term meaning embracing change, embracing failure, embracing, bad things. And they talked about AI and how you may have spent all this effort and time building things that now AI can do, in minutes, in seconds. And you built this, great project. And so you can sit there and fret about it, or you can determine as a leader, you need to make a decision, right? And you got to pivot and you got to make a change on it. So I think you got some really great concepts there, but hopefully the theme will be is like, whatever way you want to frame this up is like, you're never going to be comfortable with the analysis and with the data points. And as a leader, the great ones, they see around the corner and they make the decision, and they're willing to pivot quickly if they need to.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where innovation comes in. And you mentioned AI, but robotics and automation as well. When you break it down to supply chain, those things have been slower than they should be to be adopted by a lot of companies. And I think the hesitancy to make a decision and to be wrong or appear to be wrong, it scares too many people. So they're going to be left behind for those that do automate and do embrace AI and what's happening in both the artificial intelligence space, but the robotic space and automation space as well.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be the greatest wealth building opportunity of my generation or my lifetime is what AI does into the world and how it impacts it. I mean, it's already making an impact, and it's not going to slow down. It's only going to accelerate. And you're right. Some are fully embracing it. Some are kind of toes in the water on it. And that leads me to my next question is this may just go perfectly with what you just said, but do you see, if I ask what's the biggest white space opportunity for innovation in supply chain leadership, what do you think's the biggest opportunity for innovation in our space and for a leader coming up?
I think a lot of people from a white space standpoint, a lot of people look at supply chain as a cost center, or it's sometimes a weakness, or when you talk about supply chain, they cringe and go, yeah, that's a weakness for a lot of us. Well, I like to say, well, let's turn a weakness into a weapon. So I think that white space is where people need to play. And how do you turn it from a weakness into a weapon? Well, it's the things we talked about is how do we automate? How do we improve our service to our end customers? How do we bring value to them? How do we create something that people need, want, that makes their lives easier, better? You mentioned Amazon, right? People want something coming to their home, and now you order it at 8 p.m. and you got it at 10 p.m. right? It's crazy, but those types of things are going to be much easier based on what we're seeing in the supply chain space that are game changers, and allow you to come up with that innovation in the white space to say, okay, what's next? We do a lot of work in healthcare as an example. So whether it's direct to patient, it's fulfillment to the home, because so many people are now home-based patients, right? So how do we make that process better for them? That's the white space where people, I think, need to play and need to think is what do our end customers need, want? There's some things they probably don't even know they need or want that'll be coming out. So that's the white space that we need to play in.
Yeah, I was going to pivot into healthcare. I know you all do a lot, and you've already dipped into the answer a little, but I was just really wondering specifically about healthcare. I love your concept. Too many people view the supply chain as it's just a cost center. It's the bottom of the ladder. It's the last end, and I don't think people truly appreciate it till you have a pandemic type event, and then you understand how valuable the supply chain is and what happens when it's disrupted and how that affects all of our lives, right? But specifically healthcare, this concept of cost center, but it feels like it could be a growth engine is a better description of a supply chain, right? It's how do you turn that into a growth engine and in this white space, and just maybe on any of the questions, but elaborate a little more on healthcare, what you're seeing, what you're seeing some of the best do and how they're looking into the future.
Yeah, no, for sure. Healthcare is an exciting space for us. We've got a lot of clients in that space, whether it's manufacturers or 3PLs, or certainly a lot of interest from private equity. Yeah, there's a couple things for sure. Those that are involved in healthcare know there are a lot of things that are broken in the whole system. So that's why I think looking beyond just what you would consider, and it goes back to a good leader versus a great leader, managing versus inspiring, vision, execution. Are we just executing it flawlessly, which you have to from a quality perspective and others, or are we working and looking at the entire healthcare ecosystem and supply chain ecosystem and saying, how do we make this better for everybody? How do we provide whether it's medical devices, medical supplies, whether you're a patient on a table, whether you're a patient at home, whether you're a hospital provider, whether you're PBM, whether you're a wholesaler, whatever it may be throughout that ecosystem, how do we make that better? And how can we be a part of that? And then how can we turn that weakness of what's a broken healthcare system into a weapon? And it can start with the supply chain. So those that can, and it goes back to the second question of transparency and relationships. Can you get a relationship can you get the hospitals to sit down with the supply chain providers and so forth and create a better ecosystem? So that's the white space that we're thinking about, and we're trying to come to market and come to the supply chain and come to not only healthcare, but you can talk about e-com, and we're working on some e-com solutions as well, which crosses verticals. So that's where all of these questions come together and the leadership comes together, and then it's really asking those questions and having the right people in the room and allowing them the ability to provide what could be a solution. That's why we have weekly strategy meetings where that's all we do, right? That's all we do is throw out new things. It's the white space meeting. So religiously we have those, and then we have a weekly team meeting to get other inputs, and we have a pipeline meeting where we try to connect all the dots of everything in the pipeline and say, hey, what if we get these people together, so forth. That's why we had all of our channel partners on a one-day meeting not long ago, including yourselves, to really talk about how can we work together and within the supply chain ecosystem to make things better.
I think that's some more great advice. This is going to be the last question we talked about, but just the general theme of continuing to get better. How do you make decisions? How do you build that trust? And I think it all kind of ties into what you just ended up with, Q, which is, if you're not planning for the future, how can you help guide the future? And so that's what leverage is sitting around. You're not just sitting around, you're not just responding to what your clients, but you are thinking, how do you lean into the white space? How do you help your customers be better? And ultimately, what you said, a great leader does, which is have that vision of the future. That's why leverage is having the success, in my opinion, that it is, because you all are leaning into it and you're looking around the corner. So I've enjoyed this. We're going to shift a little bit, and we're wrapping up. We're nearing the end. I'm going to ask a little fun question of you, and we may do one or two, but we'll see. So and thanks, by the way. I think if you listening to this, if you are listening to this, let me see if I can talk straight today. If you're listening to this, there's some really good wisdom that you've shared with us, Q, and we appreciate you spending some time with the podcast and us. And thank you for that. So let's have a fun question. We changed these up because the other ones got a little bit stale. And so Amelia had some fun with this, and she switched it up. So if you could swap roles with someone else in your organization for a day, who would it be and why?
That is a fun question. And what I would say is I would be an intern. So for a variety of reasons, one, I'd be much younger. But the real reason is, and a little background, we have part of one of the, I know you guys have a lot of tenets in your business that you adhere to, and one is we want to give back, because we've all had successful careers, and as a second career, we want to give back. So we have at least 2 interns every summer, and we bring them in, and we don't have them go sit at Costco and sell prepaid phone cards or anything like that. That's not an internship, right? So we want to give back to them on what's going on in this space. How does business work? So we have them sit in those meetings that I told you about. We have them sit into those meetings and actually listen. And we actually ask them questions in it. And yeah, you get you get the dairy cow stare, when you first ask them a question, right? And but eventually they start participating, and it'd be fun to think back of when I was that young. Wow, that would have been something to hear and see and be a part of. I'll give you a quick example. 2 of our interns went with myself and a couple other folks, where we were meeting with a private equity company and another company, and helping get them together and broker an agreement and some activity. And so they were great to work with, and I introduced them, the interns, to both companies. And they said, oh yeah, have them sit in. So if you can imagine sitting in a meeting, and then dinner, again, wasn't going to have them come. The private equity group said, no, bring them. So you can imagine 2 college interns sitting in the meetings between a private equity group and an acquisition group that's being acquired, or potentially you're talking about partnerships and whatnot, live, right? So just having that, at that age and spot in your career would be very eye-opening. So I think that's the spot I would choose.
That'd be what a wonderful experience. I think I'm losing. Do I still got you there, Q?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me? Okay, gotcha. I had a little internet here on the side. So wrapping up, what a wonderful experience. So you'd like to be an intern? That would I don't know. I'd have to think about it myself. I saw it and I was like, well, I don't know who I'd switch with, but I might be an intern too with you. So we'll go with that. Well, we're at time. we greatly appreciate it. It's always fun to get together. We don't spend enough time together. I joke about this, but when we first started and you first started, true to UPS, our UPS forum, we set up a weekly meeting or an every other week meeting, right? To where we had at least something scheduled to where you and I spoke every other week, and we just kept in touch. And we've gotten away from that, but that's because we've both been blessed with success, and I'm happy for you and proud of what you've done, and you should be proud of it, and all that you and Mike and all the channel partners have done, and bringing on Bobby to help. Just good people doing good things, and no surprise that you are having the success that you are. And we're proud to call you a sister company, and glad to have your advice on our external advisory board, and thankful you were a guest and gave us some time today. So we appreciate you, and we appreciate everybody that's out there listening, and hope you enjoyed this. Stay tuned for more.
Thanks, Jimmy. Appreciate the invite, man. You guys do great things. Take care.
We want to thank you all for listening to another episode of the Zion Experience. Please make sure you subscribe to our show on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcast. If you have any ideas or topics you'd love to hear about, or maybe for a future episode, please let us know. Send us something in the comments. We appreciate you all, and we'll see you here next time.